Well, first of all, I'm going to say welcome to the Tennessee Native Plant Society's monthly seminar. And tonight, our speaker is none other than the esteemed Dennis Horn, who is um, he's a charter member of TNPS. He's been with us since the very beginning, and he's not a botanist by trade. He's an engineer, and he fell in love with our native plants and has really dug into it to the point that he is considered an expert by many, 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 many people. And he's also the lead author of our field guide, our Wildflowers of Tennessee field guide, which is available all over the place at Barnes and Noble and lots of other bookstores. And it's available sometimes through members when you see me or Dennis or Bart or a few of the board members. We do oftentimes have some books that we can sell you at a price that doesn't include tax. We're not required to collect the tax. Only the booksellers are. Okay. Dennis has been around a while. He knows his stuff, and I'm sure he's going to tell you some wonderful stories about our beautiful orchids. We have in excess of 50 native orchids here in Tennessee, and they are all gorgeous, some very tiny, but they're all beautiful. And Dennis, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, we'll see.
And would everyone else please mute yourselves? Just leave Dennis on. Okay. Looks like everybody's done that. Thank
See
you.
if we can get through the technical part of this here.
You just want to share screen at the bottom?
Okay, there we go.
There you are.
And then I guess I can go ahead and put that in the slideshow mode.
Yes.
I can figure that out.
To the left.
Okay.
Oh, there it is. No, it moved.
Let's see, is that going to work?
That's going to work beautifully. It's perfect.
Okay. All right, I guess we're ready to roll then.
I think
Thank you for having me do this program. I put this together last spring for the uh, Orchid Society of Middle Tennessee. They realized they didn't know as much about their native Tennessee orchids as they did about the tropical orchids. And so while I had this together, I thought, well, maybe it would work for the series that we do, that Karen has put together here, these monthly seminars, or that's not the right word, but anyway.
seminar works.
So this will kind of be a review then for the Plant Society. I think the Plant Society knows a lot more about these orchids than the Orchid Society does, as it turns out, which kind of surprised me. But anyway, so we'll, as Karen says, there's like 50 orchids and a couple of varieties, and we're just going to run down through them. And the orchids are, and all plants for that matter, are a strong function of the geology of wherever it is. And Tennessee has a lot of interesting geology, all the way from the flatlands of West Tennessee to the high mountains of the east. And as the terrain changes and the geology changes and the landforms, the orchids take advantage of that and find their niche. Turns out that all 50 orchids that grow in Tennessee can be found really from the Highland Rim. That's this light green section right in here. From there east, every orchid that occurs in Tennessee is from that point east. It turns out there are 3 counties in the state of Tennessee that have 50 or more rare plants. This not only orchids, but all plants that are rare. There's just 3 counties that have 50 or more rare plants, and coffee is one of them right here. Sevier County, where the Smokies are, is the second one, and the third one is Carter County, where Roan Mountain and Holston Mountain occur. Those 3 counties alone account for 80% of the orchids that occur in the state. And believe it or not, Coffee County by itself has 60% of all the orchids that occur in Tennessee. There's 31 species that occur in Coffee County. But basically the orchids occur all across the state. West Tennessee, west of the Tennessee River, has 2 species that occur more frequently there than anywhere else in the state. And West Tennessee has 23 species that occur in at least one county in West Tennessee, and 23 species is almost half of the orchids of the state. And it turns out there's 11 species that occur all throughout the state, from west to east. There's 11 species. So that's just kind of some of the statistics of where the orchids occur and why the geology of Tennessee favors them. In this case, a little more in East Tennessee than West Tennessee, but we have orchids from one end to the other. I'm going to present these alphabetically by genus. And let me see if I've got the genera or the genus name down here in the corner, but I don't think you can see it the way the bars run across the bottom. Anyway, there's 20 genera of orchids in Tennessee, and so I'm going to present them alphabetically by genus, but within each genus, it's going to vary depending on how the orchids are. Some of them I'm going to be presenting by color, some by the time of the year they bloom. So the first one we're looking at here is the putty root. It's, I guess it gets the name because the tubers can be made into a paste like putty, and it blooms about the 1st of June, just as the leaves are fading away. And the leaves, though, stay green all winter, and just fade as it starts to flower. So this is one of 3 species that it's easier to see them and find them in the winter than it is when they're in flower. These elliptical leaves are pleated, have veins that are straw color, and they're the same color on both sides. Later we'll see the cranefly orchid, which will be, the leaf shape is similar, but it'll have a very bright purple on the underneath side. That's the easy way to tell the putty root from cranefly. The cranefly probably is our most common orchid in the state of Tennessee. Grass pink is a calopogon. It's I guess called grass because it has a grass-like leaf, and of course the flowers are pink. It's a little bit unusual compared to most of the orchids in that it has the lip up on top. Orchids basically, the plan, of course, it has 6 parts to the flower, the 3 sepals, which are usually similar to each other, and then the 2 petals, which often are also similar, but then the lip is always different. And that's kind of what makes an orchid an orchid. This is going to be just a low-tech presentation. I'm not going to get into any of the high technical parts of the orchids. When a bee lands on this lip, thinking it's going to get some pollen, it gets fooled. But in the process, this lip is hinged down here, and the weight of the bee will cause it to fall down, and its back will land on this stigma, and that's how it gets pollinated. It's kind of a unique trick that it has. This is a species that was described, maybe 30 years ago, and the person that described it came through and annotated the herbarium specimen. They found 2 from 1930, one from Coffee County and one from Van Buren County, that he said were this Oklahoma grass pink. Now, nobody in Tennessee that's living today has ever seen this flower in bloom, and it may never have been in Tennessee. But because he annotated these 2 specimens as this species, it's become a part of our flora, kind of by definition. This picture was taken, I was on a trip with Bart and some others. This was in Arkansas, somewhere between Memphis and Little Rock. I don't think it occurs there anymore. It's kind of faded out there, but this was in a prairie there in Arkansas. Now we have 3 orchids that we call Pogonia, the common name of Pogonia. They probably originally were in the Pogonia genus, all of them, but now only one is. This one is called the spreading Pogonia because these sepals up here, kind of brownish or wine colored, or they spread out. So those are the sepals. The 2 petals are right here, forming a hood over the lip, and the whole thing then gets kind of put into a more of a tubular flower. We can find these at AEDC when we have our field trips out there. And by the way, the good way to see orchids is to come on our field trips. We have a lot of them focused on orchids, and all across the state from different times. And this one now is a very rare plant. I think it only occurs in 1 county in Tennessee. That's up in Carter County. And so it's this photo I took in Minnesota. In fact, I never saw this in Tennessee until this year. I did get to see it, and it was past its prime, so it wasn't showy at all, or it wasn't photogenic. So this picture was taken near Lake Itasca in Minnesota, and much common. This is a northern species that just barely gets into Tennessee in the eastern mountains. Now we have 4 species of coral root that are in 2 different genera. 3 of them are in this Coralariza. I wish you could. These bars running across the bottom is keeping me from seeing the genus Latin name. I assume you can't see it either.
We can see the genus.
You can see what?
We can see the genus.
I still can't understand you.
We are able to see the genus.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. I guess my computer is just like everything else with me. It's not up to date. Anyway, this species, or all the coral roots for that matter, have no chlorophyll. They used to be what they called saprophytes, but now that's no longer a good word. They have a symbiotic relationship with fungus and other subterranean organisms that will furnish them their food and their livelihood that they need to exist. And this one blooms in April. It pretty much all across the state, kind of scattered all across the state. And then this one blooms in the summer and is only in 2 or 3 counties in the upper Northeast, although it's very common across the northern states and even most of the Rockies in the western states, but very rare again in Tennessee. And then the third one in this genus is the autumn coral root that would be blooming mostly like September. It basically, the flowers for the most part don't open. They tend to be self-pollinated. So you don't see much of a flower. It's just mainly the ovary that swells up and produces the seed. Now the lady slippers, there's 5 of them that I'll show, and they are the third most common genus in Tennessee. And this one probably is the most common of the species. It has 2 basal leaves and a naked scape that has a pink flower or pink moccasin at the top. This one is a northern species that just barely gets into Tennessee in a couple of the eastern counties. It's more common like in Minnesota and Michigan and so forth. Beautiful lady slipper. It's the only lady slipper that has white petals and sepals. All 5 of the petals and sepals are white. It can be a single flower, as you see here, or it can be one plant with 2 flowers. And a two-flowered plant is fairly common. It happens quite frequently. The Kentucky lady slipper is our largest yellow lady slipper, maybe our largest lady slipper period. It has a very large opening in the top. It was not described as a new species until 1981. In fact, Tom Patrick and I found this in Tennessee up in Scott County about 3 months before it was described as a new species. The large yellow lady slipper can sometimes come in colonies or clumps like this, but more frequently it's just a single plants. People have asked me, what's my favorite wildflower or what's my favorite orchid? And I'd have to say this is it. It has a very well formed slipper. It has a beautiful bright yellow color. It has those twisted lateral petals. It's like a shoe that's all laced up. It's the entire package right there to me. We also have a small yellow lady slipper that's only about half the size of the large one. Occurs a lot in the same type of habitats, but usually they don't occur together. But they're just varieties of each other because they can sometimes run from one to the other. In Tennessee, you could say they're 2 separate species, but over the whole range, they vary enough one into the other that they just call them varieties of each other. Now, this is the only orchid that is not native to Tennessee. It is a European orchid and has become kind of weedy in the northeast, up around New York and Pennsylvania. This has kind of become a weedy species, but down here it's very rare. In fact, the only place I know right now that it occurs is sometimes you can find it in the parking lot of the trail to Alum Cave Bluff in the Smokies. But there was a lady in Tullahoma that these orchids popped up in her yard. She didn't know where they came from. She did collect a few plants here and there, and it just kind of got in with some of them. It would pop up in her yard, and she would mow around them and kind of take care of them. And I got to see it. Like I say, it was in the city of Tullahoma. Then she moved out to the lake, and she tried her best to transplant them and take them with her out to the lake, and that was never successful. And of course, the house in town eventually got sold, and it got turned into a manicured lawn, and we have this orchid in Tullahoma no more. But that's our only non-native species that we have in the state. The showy orchis is it has the petals and sepals make up this magenta colored hood that hangs over the top of the white lip. For years, this was in the orchis genus. And then somewhere along the line, they decided that there are no orchis genera, no orchis species in North America. They've all gotten renamed to something else. And so the orchis genus is basically reserved for species in Europe. You can see this quite frequently along the lower elevation trails in the Smokies. It clumps up, and you can see a lot of them. I've seen it in Coffee County, but it's very rare to find it. That's the best place to see it, is in the Smokies. Now the rattlesnake plantains are the Goodyear. We have two of them. This one is the small one. It's the rarest one. It's in the high mountain counties along the North Carolina line. It has kind of the net vein leaf pattern, but not to the extent that the other species does. The flowers look something like this. This is the lower half of that. The lower half of this inflorescence is what you're seeing here. And then when you get still closer, this is what they look like. Very, very beautiful once you get close enough to them. It has this pouch-like lip here. And then the other species is much more common. It's probably our second largest. I mean, as far as frequency, it's probably our second highest frequent you find in Tennessee is this species. These leaves stay green pretty much all year round, and that's the best time to find it. This is the second species next to the putty root that is the easiest to spot when it's not in flower, but in the wintertime when you see these net vein leaves, that's the rattlesnake look, I guess. And then the flowers on it are similar to the other one, but the pouch is a little bit more prominent, and the flowers are larger, and the whole plant is larger, and it's more common. This is the second genus where the common name is coil root, Hexalectris. It also has no chlorophyll. Gets all of its nutrients from the fungus and other subterranean associates. But a beautiful flower. And now this one likes limestone. So you'll find it in Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee, in areas. In fact, it was on the trails when we used to have our board meetings at Barfield Crescent there in Murfreesboro. The trail just outside the building there had some of these orchids. Now here's the second species that we call Pogonia. This one's called whorl Pogonia because there's a whorl of leaves, 5 leaves right at the base of the flower. And this is the large whorl Pogonia, and it's the more common of the two. Here's the 3 sepals and two petals here again, and the lip kind of forming a trumpet-shaped type flower. Now, Alice had me hold this and point it towards the camera so that she could see down inside the flower of this large whorl Pogonia. I questioned whether what she was really doing was checking to see if I had dirt under my fingernails. But anyway, this is a picture she took 2 or 3 years ago. And this is the small whorl Pogonia. It is rare throughout its range. It grows all the way from Georgia to Maine, but it's every state where it grows is considered rare. We have only 1 or 2 counties in Tennessee where it grows. I took this picture in Georgia. It blooms 3 weeks after the large whorl Pogonia. So a large whorl usually blooms around the 20th of April, and this would be like the 10th maybe of May. And by then the leaves have fully expanded. And you noticed here they're not fully expanded. So that's part of the difference is that. But this one also comes in doubles. Not that infrequent. I mean, when you're in a place where these grow, often maybe 15 or 20% of them will have the double flower, and they point in opposite directions, just like you see here. Now the tway blades, we have 2 genera and like 2 species in each genera. Tway means 2. I guess it's an old English name. Tway means 2, and blade means leaf. So it's saying 2 leaf, and all the plants have 2 leaves, usually a third of the way up on the stem or down low, usually at the base of the stem somewhere. This one's a lily leaf tway blade. I guess the leaves look like lilies. But Alice has a really nice photo of the flowers. I really like this photo. It's got the 3 sepals. They're kind of greenish, narrow. The 2 lower or lateral sepals kind of form a platform that the lip lays on. And the lip is kind of a wine colored, very wide and very thin. And then the strange thing is these petals. This is the petal. It's a thread-like maroon petal. And there's one on each side, and you can barely see the second one over here. Here you can see these 2 down here and over here. And here's the 2 right there. There's really thread-like petals. I think that makes this plant very interesting. The other tway blade that's in the Liparis genus is this one. It's a northern plant that gets into Tennessee in a few counties, and it's yellow or greenish yellow. And here's the two leaves, the tway blade part of it. Then we have in another genus which has always been Listera, but somewhere along the line they've decided that it's in the same genus as a European the Neodia, which is in Europe they call it the bird's nest orchid. But here anyway, this has now been changed to that genus. It has also two leaves, as the tway blade would suggest. But this is a very rare one. This is only in 2 counties, I believe, Coffee County and Fayette County, which is just east of Memphis. And it's in the Wolf River watershed. It is our earliest orchid to flower. It sometimes it's always in March or even earlier, but it's our earliest orchid species to flower each year. And the other species is up in the high mountains in East Tennessee. Small's tway blade or Appalachian tway blade occurs. You usually find it. It's rare, but you can find it under rhododendron, a lot of times in sepia areas under rhododendrons. The green adder's mouth is it's a malaxis. This looks like a big plant, but this whole plant from top to bottom is just 3 inches. It has one solitary leaf near the base, and then it has this cluster of very tiny flowers, and really the flowers, you have to look down from the top to see the open part of the flower and what it's I mean, it really faces the top, so that's where we can see it. We see this at AEDC. When we have our orchid trips to AEDC, we always find 5, 6, or 7 orchids all about the first part of June, 1st of June. And we usually always find this, but it's not out under the power lines where the others are. This one's in the woods, but we almost always find it, and it's the time of year when it blooms. Now, our largest genus of orchids in Tennessee are the Pentantheras, and they are either called rain orchids or fringed orchids. And I'm going to show these by color. There's 13 of them, and they all bloom pretty much in the summer. So rather than show them as to when they bloom, we just show them by color. And this one has white flowers. It has these pad-like leaves, almost like water lilies, but they lay flat on the ground. They're elliptical, and they and it's a rare plant in Tennessee. It only occurs in 2 counties, Carter and Unicoi, but it's a more northern plant. I'm sure I took this picture probably in Michigan or Minnesota. Then we have another very rare plant, but instead of being a northern species, it's a southern species. It grows down on the coastal plain of Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, down in that area. It has pure white flowers. We find it at Bay Prairie. It's another orchid that has the lip on top. This one kind of forms a recurved hook. You can see it right here at this one and this one. The lip shows very prominently, and the rest of the sepals and petals are down on the bottom with the lip up on top. This basically just occurs in Coffee County, and I think Chuck Wilson has found a few from time to time in Warren County next door. Now here's the third white flowered species, the monkey face. It occurs on the primarily in the uh, uh, Cumberland Plateau. Uh, it it is a candidate for federal listing. I'm not sure what the status, whether it's been designated yet or not, but it's anyway, it's being considered as a rare federal species. To me, it's a whole monkey. It's not just a monkey face, it's a whole monkey. That's what it looks like to me. Now we have, this is one of two species that's more common in West Tennessee than anywhere else in the state. And my legs are starting to cramp. But it's a more southern species. The flowers are kind of yellowish green. And the other variety of this is the northern one. It occurs more in central and east Tennessee. And the big difference are these these bracts. Well, these are much longer than the flower, whereas this one, they're shorter than the flower. The green woodland orchid grows all the way across the state, scattered across the state. It has greenish flowers, and it grows a lot in on the wet stream banks. This one blooms in late spring and on into summer. It's not only fringed, it's lacerated. It's really fringed all the way down into the very lacerate. The lip is very lacerated. So let's see. Okay, then we've got they call these the yellow fringed orchids, but they're really orange. This one is our most common, blooms around the end of July. The next one, which is less common, smaller. The fringe is smaller, the lip is smaller, and the spur is smaller. It's just a few counties in Middle Tennessee. And then finally, the rarest one. Now, 30 years ago, we had a place at AEDC, the Air Force Base, where you could count on 50 to 75 of these in flower each year in the summer. Then all of a sudden, about 15 years ago, they just disappeared, and they're essentially gone, not only from AEDC but from the whole state. And Chuck Wilson found one 2 years ago, but basically this one is about gone from the state of Tennessee. The large purple fringed orchid is just in 2 or 3 counties in upper East Tennessee. And it blooms like in late May. But then the smaller one, you can find in all the higher elevations along the North Carolina border. One place you can find it usually around the 4th of July is on the road to Klingman's Dome, just in the wet ditches. It's fairly reliable to be able to find it. And the purple fringeless orchid is the second orchid that is more common in West Tennessee than it is in the rest of the state. It occurs all the way from one end to the other, all the way from the county where Memphis is to Johnson County, at the very far corner, but there's more of it in West Tennessee than anywhere else in the state. Then the third begonia is the rose begonia. I love this photograph. This was taken by Mary Schaffner, another TNPS past president. I don't know where this photo was taken, but I love this group of three that she was able to put together. This has of course, the lip, and the two petals are kind of small, and then the three sepals are larger. You can find a lot. This is a rare plant. This is an endangered plant in Tennessee, but you can find a lot of it at AEDC under the power line, and we see it every time we have a field trip there. We see hundreds of these in that one area. It's a small plant. I mean, it looks big here, but I guess the tip across here is maybe 5/8 of an inch or something. It's fairly small. Now the shadow witch was never been found in Tennessee until about 40 years ago. And we were on a TNPS field trip down, it was on Turkey Creek above the walls of Jericho. That's in Franklin County, just right above the Alabama line. And we were looking at a sepia area that had southern maidenhair fern. And I looked down, and between Tom's 2 feet was this shadow witch. And it had never been seen before in Tennessee, and nobody in our group knew what it was except Richard Simmers. Richard was a walking encyclopedia. He had a PhD in ornithology, and he knew the birds, he knew the bees, he knew the flowers, and he knew what this was. And it's now been found in one other county. Margaret Roundhart found it later in one other county, and but it's a very rare plant in Tennessee. Now, our second most common genus is the Spiranthes, or the lady's tresses. And I'm going to show these by the flowering date rather than the color. They're all white, so that made more sense to show them. This one blooms in May. It is our earliest lady's tresses to bloom. It has a bright yellow lip, and it generally grows in cracks in limestone in creeks where it's kind of wet. And a beautiful little lady's tresses. This one's called spring lady's tresses, and it blooms in the spring in Florida, but by the time it gets to Tennessee, it doesn't flower till July. And it's kind of cream colored, and it's followed by the slender lady tresses, which has a green throat. And this one blooms in Tennessee in August. And when I lived across town in Tullahoma, it was a oak barren front yard, and there would be 50 to 75 of these come up in my yard every summer. About the 1st of June, I would just stop mowing, and then about the 1st of August, these would just pop up everywhere in my yard. And and it has a green throat. Now this one also blooms in August. It's the tiniest of ours. It's the smallest. I mean, these flowers look big here, but they're really tiny. And the flowers have no color. They're just ice white. And you sometimes find these under power lines, kind of in open areas in August. Now the oval lady's tresses, I guess it's called oval because it's kind of pointed at the bottom and the top and kind of wide in the middle. So the inflorescence is kind of oval shaped. Now, 2 years ago, Alice, these popped up in her yard there on Horse Mountain in Bedford County, and we've identified them and photographed them, and she wrote a nice little article about this this orchid. And then a month later, they it forms these seed pods. These have actually opened, and thousands and thousands of little tiny seed have popped out of these. But this is kind of what the capsules look like about a month later after they've bloomed. Now we have a group of a group of the ladies' tresses that they call the Cernua complex. Spiranthes cernua occurs all over the eastern United States. It's widespread. It usually grows in acid soils, kind of damp acid soils, and we have this, of course, in Coffee County and different places up on the Cumberland Plateau. But in the 1990s and early 2000s, we were finding these plants that we were trying to call the Great Plains ladies' tresses. This is the one that grows in the west, in the plains to the west, and finally Bart had this plant that Dr. Shaviak finally said, yeah, that's Magna Camporum, and so it became a part of our flora in either 2005 or 2006, and still rare in Tennessee, but it is now part of our flora. Then there's the yellow lady's tresses, that is a more northeastern species that just gets into Tennessee kind of in the eastern counties. It's similar, but more of an orange yellow. And then there's the last one I'm going to show is this marsh lady's tresses, or fragrant lady's tresses. Has a very sweet fragrance. It kind of grows in wet areas, kind of in colonies. And it also is found just in 1 or 2 or 3 counties in East Tennessee. One, in fact, just outside of Knoxville. Now here's the third species that you can find easier in the winter than you can when it's in bloom. This is the cranefly orchid. And you can see here that when you turn this leaf over and look on the back, it's purple. And so you can easily tell it from the putty root by the bright purple on the back side. It's just there in the wintertime, and by the time it flowers around the 1st of August, the leaf is totally gone. The flowers are very drab colored, about the color of the leaf litter. And this is our most common species in the state of Tennessee, but often overlooked and hard to find because of its color and because the leaf is not there when it's in flower. Now the individual flowers are strange, and they're not symmetrical. They're kind of cocked to one side. I don't know whether that's the way craneflies are, but that's the way this orchid is. It has a very long spur that goes on back well past the stem that it's attached to. Now this is the last orchid. This is the three birds orchid. I think this is a beautiful photo taken by Dick Suey. He was an orchid amateur like myself from Michigan. And but it's called three birds orchid because often the flowers do occur in threes, although that isn't always the case. The interesting thing about this orchid is that it has kind of a synchronization. It's synchronized kind of to a weather event. The buds will swell up and get ready, and the flower will get ready to bloom, to open, but it'll sit there and wait until a cold front comes, and when the temperature drops about 10 degrees, then in 24 to 48 hours, all of those that are ready to flower will all flower the same day. They all synchronize to flower the same day, and then it'll just be bloom. It'll just bloom for one day, and then it'll wait for another synchronization, and then there'll be another. Sometimes there'll be as many as 3 waves of this to bloom. Again, when I lived over on the other side of town, I had 3 different years when these come up in my front yard, and so it's sometimes very hard to find, and then yet here it was right in my yard. Now, all of the, 41 of the orchids in Tennessee are we have a photograph in this book of 41. We have 6 more that we describe and talk about. So altogether we have 47 of the 50 orchids that occur in Tennessee are in this book. It also has good coverage of the trilliums, the milkweeds, and a lot of the Middle Tennessee cedar glade plants are in this book. When this book was published in 2005, most wildflower books of this sort had about 400 or 500 color photos, and we wanted to give better coverage to a lot of the flower groups as well as the cedar glade plants, and so we got 800 color photos in this book, and then we describe another 450 species to bring the total up to 1,250. This book was just reprinted in February, and we included some updates with it, and we tried to take care of all the corrections that we had. Let me see what I'm doing here. We'll go back to where I'm about done, so I don't know that I need to go back. What I wanted to say is, I'm through with my presentation, but I want to give the orchids themselves a chance to talk to you just a minute. Most of the orchids in Tennessee like where they are. They like their home. For the most part, they're doing well. They have caregivers that take care of them. The fungus and other organisms that live in the soil take care of these orchids, and that's a happy coexistence. And if you try to bring them home to your house, to your place, you have to bring the fungus with it, and but the trouble is you can't see the fungus. It's underground, and about the only way that you know that the caregiver isn't happy is if the orchid dies, because it's not happy. So the orchids really ask you to help them protect their habitats where they occur naturally, and that will help them to continue to exist, and be happy where they are. And so that's all I have. Try to answer some questions best I can. I'm sorry, I all of a sudden my legs started cramping, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do about it. I just tried to kind of suffer through it. But anyway, thank you so much, and I'll try to answer any questions.
In the chat section, we have a few questions or comments, actually. One is, love all the stats you're giving about the occurrences. And that's from Terry Joyce. Todd Crabtree says that the Plantathera integralabia, integralabia, Plantathera integralabia is now federally listed, and we are able to get funds to work on recovery efforts. That's good news.
That's great.
Thanks, Todd.
That is great. Yeah, I knew it started out as being a candidate for listing, and I just didn't know where it finally wound up or whether it had been actually listed. So that's great. Great news.
Another comment is very nice shadow witch photo. Angela Carter has a question. Did Plantathera integra come up and bloom this year?
You're saying Plantathera integra? No, I don't think it did. I think I would have heard from Chuck Wilson if it had flowered this year. No, I don't think it did. And I don't know whether it's besides AEDC, there may be one other place somewhere in a power line somewhere where it also shows up now and then, but I haven't heard of it flowering this year either.
Another comment, yes, the stats were awesome. Jeannie Jackson says, wonderful program, and I plan to hike more now with retirement. So you've got one convert.
Well, I think, I'd say coming on a TNPS hike, I mean, some we have specifically focused on just an orchid trip, but then we find a lot of orchids along the way when we're focused on other things as well. And of course, we try to see and photograph and identify everything that we see, but I think a good way to see the orchids and learn about them is to come on our field trips.
Bob Davis comments that it's a shame that, I think he means TVA, uses chemicals on their power lines to stunt growth. Yeah, we all would agree on that. Bettina says, thank you, Dennis, for a lovely presentation. And Terry Joyce says, yes, look forward to many hikes with Dennis in 2024.
Okay.
Are there any other questions that if you would like to, you can unmute and just ask? No, I think there's two more already.
People lady slippers? What are people lady slippers?
I think it means autocorrect can be a pain.
Oh, yes, it sure can.
So you have to kind of read with that in mind. I have many purple lady slippers, probably pink lady slippers in my woods, but they don't all bloom. They just bloom every so often. That's from Sherry.
I guess pink lady slippers are probably our most common lady slippers, but they're the most particular about where they are, and they almost never survive if they're relocated. And even while they will bloom in one area for a while, and then they'll go away, and then they'll pop up somewhere else, and they'll go through several years and then they'll go away, and they just keep moving around. But they somehow are able to move around on their own, but somehow when we try to move them to where we want them, they're never happy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're interesting. I mean, I know that that spring coral root, the Worcester's coral root, of course it's scattered across the state and pops up here and there. But one year when the Old Stone Fort, there where the visitor center is, they've got a little license plate money to put in a little wildflower garden, and they mulched it down with wood chips, and those those Wister's coral root came up by the hundreds that year, and then they disappeared. Maybe a year or two later they disappeared. But that one year they just really blossomed because those wood chips were put down, and it was strange. It was just an example of where we really got just a explosion of orchids, and totally by surprise.
Wonderful. Bob Davis also comments, grass cutters are using broadleaf weed killers on yards, many full of sporanthes. Yeah, it's unfortunate. We'll never know all the things they're killing. April Moore says we just this year found Sporanthes ovalis aristolata at our farm in Giles County. We are quite surprised. We had found Sporanthes lacera previously. Well, you might want to let us have a field trip to your farm.
That's right.
That could happen. Richard knows.
Absolutely.
Which Sporanthes did you have there in Giles County?
We had lacera at the edge of our field, but then later I was surprised when we found actually Sporanthes ovalis aristolata, the southern oval ladies tresses, and I only found one, and of course then I went into a mad panic going, there got to be more, but it was the first time I'd seen it there. I was surprised. I was very surprised.
Okay, very good.
Cynthia Rohrback comments, really enjoyed your presentation, Dennis. Robert Davis says we found Three Birds orchid blooming on the Spruce Flats Falls Trail at Tremont one August.
Okay.
Terry Joyce, I may have missed what ladies' tresses blooms late in the year, like September, October.
All in that Surya complex. Those last four that I showed are the ones that bloom from September to usually the last one to flower is the Magna Camporum, and it'll bloom on up into the first week of November. It is the very last orchid, very last orchid to bloom in Tennessee, whereas the southern Twayblade is the earliest one to bloom in Tennessee.
Bettina comments the Noah Bud Ogle Trail in the Smokies has hundreds of pink lady slipper leaves, but only a few bloom. Actually, I saw quite a few bloom this past spring.
Yeah, they, some years you will have 50 to 100 of them there on that trail, the trail that comes off of the Noah Bud Ogle. On the Noah Bud Ogle Trail itself, there used to be several, and there's not many left there anymore, but there's a little side trail that goes in the direction of Gatlinburg, and down in there, I didn't see them this year because I was told that there weren't any, and that was wrong. Like I say, Karen saw them, and I'm sure others did too. But in past years, and I think probably this year too, there's 50 to 100 of them down in there. They're so far very reliable. There's even some yellows down in there too.
I was going to say, I saw a yellow tucked in there with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Richard Hitt says, for certain Sporanthes species, I've read that the direction of spiraling, right-handed or left-handed, is random, i.e. both types of spirals occur for certain genera. Are there any Sporanthes species that always spiral in the same direction?
I really don't know. And there are some of them, like the Sporanthes lacera variety Gracillus, The one I had, 50 to 75 in my yard, they would, some of them would spiral very tightly and others wouldn't hardly spiral at all. They would just, might make from top to bottom, they might make one turn. They're very variable as to how much they spiral. I never did look at the direction that they spiral, but I know the amount of spiraling can vary significantly, even with the same species.
Okay. Bob Davis comments, from looking at Spiranthes, they do not bloom every year, but usually several years apart, like 5 years. Okay.
Well, they can vary a lot. Like say in my yard where I was for 35 years, they were very consistent every year. Now the spring ladies tresses, the vernalis, it would just be occasional. I mean, I might have one year, none for 2 or 3 years, and then maybe 2 or 3. I mean, they were very sporadic. But the Lacera was very prolific every year.
Okay.
When you
Holly Taylor commented, thank you, Dennis. I hope to finally join you all on a field trip this next year. So you'd be welcome, Holly. April comments, the Spiranthes ovalis arostelata we found at our farm didn't start blooming until September. Definitely one of the later ones.
It blooms in September. That's its month to bloom. It's scattered, I think, all across the state. Spiranthes look a lot alike. They're all the same color and some of them are very hard to tell one from another. The thing about ovalis that I find, it has for those that bloom in September, it has flowers that are 7 millimeters long, whereas all the others in that Cernua complex have flowers that are 10 to 12 millimeters long. So you can tell them apart by the size of the flowers. The other thing is most of the Spiranthes that bloom in fall, there's hardly any leaves. I mean, most of the leaves have already just dried up by then. Ovalis almost always has leaves, and they're strap-like. They're long and very prominent strap-like leaves. I think those are the two ways that I tell ovalis from all the other Spiranthes. And like I say, they almost always bloom in September.
And April had a comment that made me laugh. Orchids are kind of like cats. Good luck getting them to follow your plan.
Yeah, they have a mind of their own, and I think they take their directions from their caregivers. Not from us, but from their caregivers.
fungal caregivers.
Watching the tipularia is a very intricate thing, and they come out with a certain symmetry. So do many other orchids, but they are spaced in such a way that everything is symmetrical, even so it's really asymmetric.
The individual flowers are asymmetric, but like you say, you take the whole inflorescence and they fit together with each other. But yeah, that's true. They make a nice. I mean, the inflorescence as a whole is very symmetrical looking, even though the individual flowers are not. That's true.
And when you mark an orchid this year, and you think it's going to come back up the same place next year, you are absolutely wrong. It will. I've not seen any orchid that spreads itself on its own to come up at the same spot the following year.
Well, if they don't have leaves, if they're dependent, I mean, if they're like have no chlorophyll, that may just pop up anywhere, just like a mushroom just pops up anywhere. But like a putty root, for example, it has a leaf, and then in the spring there will either be a flower there at that leaf or there won't. I mean, they'll be associated with where the flower was, with where the leaf was in the winter, or there may not be any flower at all. But it'll always be associated with that leaf if it flowers. But that's not true with other orchids. So yeah, it varies a lot depending on which orchid it is and how much it's dependent on its own leaves and its own energy, and how much it depends on the fungus that's providing its nutrition and subsistence.
To save an orchid in the wild, I have built like a coffee table. It's wooden, just had some fencing over the top, but with that the turkeys will actually stay away and not scratch.
Now that's good.
It's like a coffee table with a wire mesh on top.
Okay. Well, they have to be protected from, like you say, from everything from deer to turkeys to rabbits. That's true.
We have one more question from Richard. The Spiranthes ovalis that occurs at Owl's Hill Nature Sanctuary in Brentwood is largely restricted to a canebrake area. Is that common, or is there a reason for the preference for the canebrake there?
It's about the canebrake, the bamboo canebrake. Is that, I guess that's
Right. Yeah, the native river cane.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with their association with that. I'm trying to think where I've seen them. Of course, Alice had them in her yard, and then I've seen them. In fact, this new place that Margaret Reinhardt found the shadow witch. There were some there. It's just a wooded area. I don't remember whether it was moist or not. The other place I've seen this is down on Little Swan Creek, and it was just a wooded slope above the creek. I mean, I can't remember any particular associated other plants with them. It was just like a wooded, semi-dry slope. And that's all I remember. Like I say, those are the three places I remember seeing them, and I don't remember anything that was special or any other plants that were associated with them.
We once saw it on a parking place.
At your place?
On a parking place on one of our outings years ago, the Shadow Witch.
Oh, gosh, I don't remember that. I just really know of it in those two places. And yeah, one of them used to be able to drive to it, which was really convenient. You can't do that anymore because it's been gated off. But one of them you could almost step out of the car and be stepping on them. But I guess those days are over.
Bob Davis commented that colonies seem to indicate where conditions are good, but solo plants do not find very good conditions.
Yes.
That's probably true. And he also comments the deer eat sporanthes. Deer eat everything.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Hmm. Very nice. Thank you, Dennis, says Terry.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me to do this, and I'm sorry I got the leg cramp and had to kind of squirm, but I was able to make it on through. It's the cramp is okay now, but it was really painful there for a few minutes. But yeah, appreciate you inviting me, and I'm happy to have done the program.
We appreciate you immensely. Tom Wellborn comments that TNPS should work with Great Smoky Mountains to change their mowing to support the native wildflowers. I thought they were pretty good about wildflowers.
Yeah, I don't know if they do or not. Of course, the Smokies have so many habitats that are not right on the roadsides that I'm not sure how much they pay attention to the mowing and the flowering, but I know certainly like in Texas, they really pay attention to their mowing cycles and try to get the bluebonnets and the paintbrushes, to be very showy every year. But it's not that easy. The flowers in Tennessee are not that easy to synchronize to the mowing.
Okay, one comment was there was some inopportune mowing in Cades Cove this past season. Okay. Lots of comments with thank you, Dennis. I really enjoyed your presentation. Great presentation. Very nice. Thank you, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Lots of thank yous. And I think everyone has very much appreciated what you've shared with us, Dennis. Thank you for closing out our year's worth of presentations. We'll be back in January, and I'm sure that'll be posted very soon. And we'll let you know what the schedule is for next year once we have it together. I agree. Thank you very much, Dennis. Thank you for sharing with us. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime.
All right.
Hopefully out on the trail.
There you go.
All right. With that, I'm going to say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you again. It was great.
Yes, it was.